As a Gibraltar colleague, it's important to understand the dynamics of the regulatory environment that shape and guide the U.S. banking system. In recent years, there has been increased collaboration between banks and government to safeguard and protect client assets and deposits. Today, we are here with partners from one of South Florida's top law firms, Avila, Rodriguez, Hernandez, Mena, and Ferry. The firm specializes in all aspects of banking, including regulatory matters. They are here to talk about the priorities of regulators and what you as a colleague need to be aware of to nurture a culture of compliance at Gibraltar. Thanks, Al and Patricia, for joining us. We look forward to your insights and we'd like to hear about your experiences. Can we start maybe with providing us a little background information? BSA, Bank Secrecy Act, AML, Anti-Money Laundering, and SARS, Suspicious Activity Reports. Now, these are all words that relate to the rules and laws that govern the banking industry, but where does it all come from? What's at the root of it all?
Thank you very much. We're happy to be here. I think we have to go back to September 11th. That's really the root of the more recent changes and the more recent enforcement of the anti-money laundering laws in the United States, including the Bank Secrecy Act. After September 11th, banks were just as horrified as anyone else with respect to what had occurred on that date and wanted to cooperate with the regulators in finding ways to prevent terrorist financing from flowing through the institutions. They wanted to make sure that no other illicit activities were also going through the banks. And then came Riggs Bank.
That's absolutely right. In fact, the current regulatory environment, most people will tell you that there's a dividing date, and that is pre-Riggs and post-Riggs. Pre-Riggs, everyone wanted to cooperate in the fight against terrorism. Banks, as Patty says, were just as appalled at everything that had happened. And as a result of that, there was this degree of cooperation, which I'm not going to say was unprecedented, but was an incredible degree of cooperation between regulators and banks. If a regulator saw something wrong, he wasn't going to criticize the bank. They would work on ways of resolving it. And then came Riggs. Riggs was one of the major financial institutions based in Washington, and it banked a lot of Middle Eastern accounts, primarily Middle Eastern embassies. And there was a lot of suspicious activity that went through those accounts that was not reported. As a result of that, when the regulators did uncover this, a scandal ensued because Congress felt that the regulators had not exercised proper oversight in having caught these situations earlier. They were very heavily criticized. So you had two consequences. One was that Riggs, a very old and established bank, a very prestigious bank, essentially failed, essentially was sold. The other thing that happened was that the regulators, because of the level of criticism they received, they went back and basically told their examiners, this is not going to happen again. And so we went from a level of incredible cooperation to essentially a new era of zero tolerance. If something was wrong, the regulators are going to come down, and they were going to come down hard on the financial institutions.
I think it's important that as part of this zero tolerance policy that the regulators adopted, the regulators formed teams of very specialized examiners that went out to examine individual banks all over the country with respect to their BSA compliance programs. At the time, the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, which is currently the regulator of Gibraltar Bank, was one of these regulators that formed these specialized teams. They trained their employees to make sure that they would find any deficiencies in the institutions. At the time of Riggs, Gibraltar Bank was regulated by the Office of Thrift Supervision, the OTS. The new regulator of Gibraltar Bank is the OCC, and so these teams that the OCC has developed over years since September 11th are ready and able to come in to Gibraltar Bank to supervise.
One of the things that I think that Gibraltar will find is that the OCC examiners that come in will be looking at things from a different perspective. They'll be looking things, frankly, in a level of a little bit stricter than was with the OTS beforehand. Their level of expectations are going to be higher than I think the expectations that were present at the bank before.